All right, so we're diving into something today that I think a lot of us have probably thought about at some point. You know those times when you just find yourself wondering, is my marriage over?
It's a big one.
It is a big one.
Yeah. And a loaded question, for sure.
And today we are taking a deep dive into some fascinating insights from Oprah Daily.
Ooh, oh.
I know they're experts that might just help you figure things out.
I love that. It's such a good one.
Yeah.
And, we're not giving advice or telling anyone what to do, just kind of offering some signposts.
Signposts, I like that.
Based on what the experts think to kind of help spark some reflection on your own situation.
I love that. And you know what the first one is? A real head scratcher. Sometimes never arguing can be a bad sign.
Yeah.
I mean,
who hasn't dreamt of that?
seriously.
Zero conflict relationship.
Yeah, like peace and harmony. It sounds idyllic.
Right. But, healthy relationships involve two individuals
Right.
with their own thoughts and feelings and, yes, disagreements. So when you entirely bypass conflict, that can actually signal a deeper detachment.
Interesting.
Like you've just stopped investing energy in connecting or having those important conversations.
Okay, so a little healthy debate can actually be a good thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about fighting for the relationship, not against each other.
I like that.
Yeah. And it's not about picking fights.
Right.
Just for the sake of it. But those disagreements, when handled well,
Yeah,
can show that you're both still engaged and invested in making things work.
that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting because Oprah Daily also points out that even how you argue matters. Like focusing on winning an argument can actually backfire and erode the connection.
It's so true because then you are more concerned with proving your point than understanding your partner's perspective.
Right.
And it creates this competitive dynamic
Yeah.
instead of a collaborative one.
So it's about tackling the problem together, not attacking each other. Okay, which brings me to another point that Oprah Daily brought up that I found really fascinating. This whole idea of subconsciously provoking your partner to initiate the breakup.
Oh, the self-sabotage tango.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes we might feel trapped or scared to be the one to call it quits.
Yeah.
And so we start pushing buttons, hoping our partner will just reach their breaking point.
Like outsourcing the breakup.
It is. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Totally. And it makes you wonder how much of our behavior in relationships is driven by things we're not even fully aware of.
Right, and sometimes our bodies are way more honest than our minds are.
Yes.
Oprah Daily talks about how feeling stressed or anxious when your spouse enters the room can be a huge red flag.
That's so interesting.
It's true, though.
It is?
Like your heart races, but
Yeah.
not in the good way.
Yeah. No butterflies. Just, ugh.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, here we go again.
It's a visceral reaction. It's hard to ignore.
Yeah, and our bodies are incredible truth tellers, even when we're trying to convince ourselves that everything is fine.
Speaking of honesty, Oprah Daily also talks about how hiding your true self in a relationship can be a major sign of trouble.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah,
We all deserve to be loved and accepted for who we truly are. Quirks.
absolutely.
And when you constantly feel like you have to censor yourself or pretend to be someone you're not, it creates a distance that prevents real intimacy.
Yeah, and it's got to be exhausting trying to keep up that facade all the time, which reminds me of another facade. Those picture-perfect couples on social media. Oprah Daily actually suggests that oversharing those happy couple pics can sometimes be a red flag.
Oh, I love that.
I do too.
The lady doth protest too much, right?
Yes.
Sometimes that constant need to project an image of perfection is actually masking deeper insecurities.
Yeah, it's almost like trying to convince everyone, maybe even yourselves,
Yeah.
that everything is amazing when it's not.
It's that curated highlight reel that doesn't show the full picture. And what about when real life starts to crowd in kids' work, those never-ending to-do lists? Oprah Daily points out how letting those things take center stage for too long can create a real chasm between partners.
It's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of daily life and lose sight of nurturing that connection with your partner, and you're living more like ships passing in the night
Yes.
than two people sharing a life.
And then there's that subtle shift in the language you use.
Uh-huh.
They say that using I instead of we can be a sign that things are starting to unravel.
Yeah, the way we talk about our relationship can be really telling.
It can.
And when you start using more individualistic language,
Right.
it often reflects a growing sense of separateness.
So it's like you're mentally checking out of the partnership, even if you haven't physically walked out the door yet. But what happens when your head and your heart are at war?
Ooh.
Let's say everyone in your life is telling you to stay in the marriage, but your gut is screaming, get out.
That's a tough spot to be in.
It's-
No doubt. But at the end of the day, it's your life
Yeah.
and your decision.
You're living it.
While it's important to consider the advice of loved ones,
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to trust your own instincts even when it's scary.
Yeah, because no one else sees what goes on behind closed doors.
That's right.
And speaking of things not being said, Oprah Daily brought up another interesting point. Who do you turn to when you have big news to share?
Ooh.
Good or bad?
That's such a good one to ask yourself.
It is.
You know, in a healthy relationship,
Yeah.
your partner should be at the top of that list.
I would think so.
Yeah, sharing those key moments, the highs and the lows, helps to keep you connected. And when that stops, loneliness can creep in even if you're physically together.
It's like you're drifting apart without even realizing it. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room, infidelity. Is that something a marriage can ever truly recover from?
It's a massive hurdle, for sure.
It is.
But according to Oprah Daily, it is possible to work through it. The key is genuine forgiveness, not just sweeping it under the rug or constantly rehashing the past.
Yeah, it's got to be about rebuilding trust and actively choosing to move forward together.
Exactly.
But sometimes the signs are less about emotions and more about actions, like making secret financial moves or actively searching for a new job. Oprah Daily suggests that this could mean you're mentally checking out of the marriage, even if you haven't consciously admitted it yet.
It's a way of preparing for a future without your partner,
Wow.
even if you haven't fully faced that reality.
Actions speak louder than words. As they say, look, we all know relationships have their ups and downs, but it shouldn't feel like an uphill battle all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. There will always be challenges, but healthy relationships should feel more inspiring than draining.
More energizing than exhausting.
Yes.
Okay, one last big one from Oprah Daily. What if your therapist starts voicing concern about your marriage?
Oh,
That would definitely set off alarm bells for me.
right. Therapists are generally pretty cautious about giving direct advice.
Yeah, they are.
So if they do speak up, it means they're seeing something that's troubling them.
That makes sense.
Maybe they're noticing patterns or behaviors that you're not fully aware of. Or
Yeah.
perhaps you've been downplaying the severity of the situation.
Right, it's like they have that objective viewpoint that can help you see things more clearly.
Precisely. They can offer valuable insights and help you explore your options in a safe and supportive environment.
I think that's so important, especially when you're feeling lost and confused. You know, after going through all these potential warning signs, it strikes me that if you're constantly wondering if you should leave, you probably already know the answer deep down.
Sometimes we already have the answers within ourselves, but we might be afraid to acknowledge them.
It's easier to stay in the familiar even when it's not serving us anymore. So we've covered a lot of ground here, a whole bunch of potential signs that a marriage might be in trouble. But what about the flip side? What does a healthy, thriving relationship actually look like?
That's a great question.
It is.
And it's the perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, listeners, because we're about to explore the brighter side of love.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in all the things that can go wrong in a relationship.
Right.
Especially when you're already in that headspace of questioning everything.
Totally.
But, I think it's equally important to define what right looks and feels like for you.
Absolutely. Just because you're not running for the hills doesn't mean you're skipping through a field of daisies.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So how do we know if we're actually in a good place relationship-wise?
Well, all that talk about I versus we statements,
Yes.
in a strong partnership.
Yeah.
Those we statements actually abound.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a sign that you're approaching life as a team.
Right.
You're sharing goals, dreams, and that sense of we're in this together.
It's like that feeling of being on the same page.
Yeah.
Like you're both facing the world side by side,
Yeah.
not as two separate entities battling it out alone.
Exactly. And that sense of teamwork extends to decision making too.
Okay.
In a healthy relationship, partners consult each other,
Uh-huh.
they value each other's opinions, and they make choices collaboratively.
So it's not about one person calling all the shots.
Right.
Or always getting their way.
It's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
compromise, where you both feel heard and respected, even if you don't always agree on everything.
Right. And even when those disagreements do pop up, it's the way you handle them that makes all the difference.
Totally.
So we're not aiming for a relationship where there's never any conflict, because let's be real, that sounds impossible.
Definitely not. Disagreements are a natural part of any relationship.
Okay.
But what matters is that you can argue constructively without resorting to personal attacks or that whole, I need to win at all costs mentality.
So it's about fighting fair, as they say.
Exactly. And that means being willing to truly listen to your partner's perspective, even if you don't agree with it, expressing your own feelings clearly but respectfully, and working together to find a resolution that feels fair to both of you.
Yeah, and sometimes that means agreeing to disagree.
Yes.
Not every conflict needs to end with a winner and a loser.
Yeah.
But moving away from those big blow-ups, what about those smaller everyday moments?
Oh, those are so important.
I think so too.
In a thriving relationship, those little things are not so little after all.
Right.
It's about taking the time to really listen to each other at the end of a long day,
Uh-huh.
sharing a funny story, or simply enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence.
It's about being present and engaged in each other's lives, even in the midst of all the chaos that life throws at us.
Exactly. And speaking of chaos,
Mm.
how a couple navigates those inevitable life challenges can really reveal the strength of their bond.
Okay.
Think about those times when you're facing illness, job loss, family drama, or any other storm that comes your way. Are you there for each other?
Yeah, are you offering support?
Yeah,
A shoulder to lean on?
exactly. So it's about being there through thick and thin, not just showing up for the good times and piecing out when things get rough. It's about being a source of strength and comfort for each other, knowing you can always count on that other person to have your back.
And that support doesn't always mean having all the answers or fixing everything,
No.
right? Sometimes it's simply about being a good listener,
Really.
offering a shoulder to cry on, or just being there to hold space for your partner's emotions.
That's it. It's about empathy and understanding, meeting your partner where they're at, even if you can't fully relate to what they're going through.
Absolutely. And that also makes me think about acceptance. Accepting each other's flaws and imperfections. Because let's face it, none of us are perfect.
You're so right. Expecting perfection from your partner is a recipe for disappointment.
I agree.
It's about seeing the whole person, both the good and the bad, and loving them anyway.
Yeah. And hey, sometimes those quirks and imperfections are what make us love someone even more. It's what makes them unique and special.
I love that it's about appreciating those things that make your partner who they are.
Yes.
Even if those things are sometimes messy or imperfect.
Mhm.
But it's not just about accepting the flaws, it's also about celebrating each other's strengths,
Oh, absolutely.
recognizing and appreciating
Yes.
each other's talents, accomplishments, and positive qualities. It's about being each other's biggest cheerleaders.
Encouraging each other to grow and pursue their passions, both individually and as a couple. It's about fostering an environment of support and encouragement where you both feel empowered to become your best selves.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, we've talked about teamwork, communication, support,
Uh-huh.
but what about the fun stuff?
Yes.
Where does playfulness and romance fit into all of this?
Such a great question. And you're right. Keeping that spark alive is essential for a thriving relationship.
Yeah.
It's about finding ways to connect on a deeper level,
Uh-huh.
both emotionally and physically.
Okay, so we're talking date nights,
Yes.
spontaneous adventures, stolen kisses, all that good stuff.
All that good stuff. It's about making time for each other, prioritizing that connection, and finding ways to keep things exciting and fresh. And sometimes it's those simple, unexpected gestures
Yeah.
that can make the biggest impact.
Like a sweet text message in the middle of the day or a surprise cup of coffee in bed?
Yes. Those little things can really go a long way
They do.
in showing your partner you're thinking of them.
Absolutely. Those little gestures speak volumes. And it's not just about those grand romantic gestures. It's also about finding joy in the everyday moments.
Yes.
Like laughing together over a silly inside joke, dancing in the kitchen while you're cooking dinner, or just cuddling up on the couch and enjoying each other's company.
Exactly. It's about creating a shared world where you can be yourselves, have fun, and genuinely enjoy each other's presence. But we also know that, life can get busy and stressful.
It can.
And it's easy to let those playful, connected moments slip away.
Yeah, so how do we keep that spark alive when we're juggling work kids and all the other demands of modern life? Because it feels like something always has to give.
It definitely takes effort
Yeah.
and intentionality. It's about making that conscious choice to prioritize your relationship.
Yes.
Even when things get hectic, scheduling those date nights,
Yes.
planning those weekend getaways, or even just setting aside some time each day to connect without distractions, it all adds up.
It's about making sure that your relationship doesn't get lost in the shuffle of everything else that's going on. And I love that you mentioned being creative. It doesn't always have to be a fancy dinner or a weekend trip.
Right.
What are some other creative ways to connect that you've seen work well for couples?
It really depends on, your interests as a couple.
Yeah.
Maybe you take a cooking class together, learn a new dance.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, or start a fun DIY project.
Or maybe you just turn off the TV, put away your phones, and actually talk to each other for an hour.
That's a great one.
It
It's
is.
amazing how much closer you can feel when you disconnect from all the distractions and truly give each other your undivided attention.
Which, speaking of deeper connections, brings us to another important aspect of a thriving relationship: intimacy.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because it's not just about the physical stuff, right?
Definitely not. Well, physical intimacy is important. It's only one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
We're also talking about emotional intimacy, that feeling of being seen, understood, and accepted for who you truly are at your core.
It's about being vulnerable with each other,
Yeah.
sharing your thoughts, fears, and dreams. It's about feeling safe enough to let your guard down and just be your authentic self without judgment.
You nailed it. And that kind of intimacy takes time and effort to cultivate. It's not something that just happens overnight.
Yep.
It's built through trust, open communication, and a willingness to be emotionally present with each other. But it's not always easy, right?
Not always.
Yeah.
There might be past hurts, insecurities, or communication breakdowns that kind of get in the way. So what are some tips for overcoming those obstacles and deepening that emotional connection?
First and foremost, create a safe space for open and honest communication. That means being respectful of each other's feelings, even when you don't agree.
Yeah, it's about active listening,
Yeah.
really tuning in to what your partner is saying, both verbally and nonverbally, and making them feel heard.
Exactly. And it's also about being willing to share your own thoughts and feelings, even when it feels scary or uncomfortable.
Because vulnerability can be tough,
Mhm.
but it's also the foundation of true intimacy.
Absolutely. And sometimes it can be helpful to seek guidance from a therapist or counselor.
Oh, yeah.
They can provide a neutral perspective and help you develop healthier communication skills.
That's a great reminder that it's okay to ask for help,
Yes.
especially when it comes to something as important as your relationship.
That's right.
And it's not all about talking, right?
Right?
It's also about those shared experiences.
Yes, doing things together
Uh-huh.
that you both enjoy, whether it's hiking, going to concerts, or just cuddling up and watching a movie, creating those shared memories
Yeah.
that strengthen your bond and bring you closer.
It's about experiencing life together, side by side, which leads us back to that other aspect of intimacy. The physical side. What does healthy physical intimacy look like in a long-term relationship?
Well, every couple's different, of course.
Of course.
But in general, it's about finding ways to express love and affection that feel good for both partners.
So it's not just about sex,
Right.
but also about cuddling,
Yes.
holding hands, giving each other massages, all those little touches that make you feel loved and appreciated.
Exactly. And when it comes to sex,
Uh-huh.
open and honest communication about your needs and desires is crucial.
Because what worked for you 5 years ago might not work for you today,
That's right.
right? Our bodies change, our needs evolve, and it's important to be able to talk about those things with your partner.
Absolutely. It's about being able to communicate your desires and boundaries in a way that feels safe and respectful.
Yeah.
And being open to trying new things
Right.
and keeping things exciting.
It's about keeping that spark alive even when life gets busy.
That's
Yeah. And remembering that intimacy in all its forms is a journey, not a destination.
beautifully said. It's something you continue to cultivate and nurture throughout your relationship. And, all of these elements we've been talking about,
Yes.
teamwork, communication, support, playfulness, intimacy,
Hmm.
they all work together to create that strong and fulfilling partnership.
It's like a beautiful tapestry woven together with all these different threads.
I love that analogy, but of course, sometimes those threads get tangled and we need to take some time to untangle them.
So it's normal to have ups and downs,
Yes.
disagreements,
Yeah.
and even periods of distance.
Absolutely no relationship is perfect and challenges are inevitable.
Right.
What matters is how you handle those challenges and whether you're both committed to working through them together.
It's about having the tools and the willingness to navigate those rough patches and come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. And, sometimes those challenges can actually be opportunities for growth. They can help you learn more about yourselves, each other, and what you truly need to thrive as a couple.
It's like those challenges are the fertilizer that helps your relationship grow even stronger.
I love that it's about seeing those challenges as stepping stones, not stumbling blocks.
But as much as we'd love to believe that all relationships are destined for happily ever after, we also have to acknowledge that not all relationships are meant to last forever.
You're absolutely right. And sometimes recognizing that a relationship has run its course is a sign of strength and self-awareness.
It's about honoring your own needs and well-being, even if it means making a difficult decision.
Exactly. And, even if a relationship does end, it doesn't mean that it was a failure.
So what can we learn from those experiences?
Yes.
Even the painful ones?
Every relationship, whether it lasts a lifetime or a season, teaches us something valuable about ourselves,
Oh,
about what we want and need,
yeah.
and about how to show up in a partnership.
It's all part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and everything in between.
Exactly. And, sometimes endings can also be beginnings.
So what does it look like to move on from a relationship with grace and resilience? That sounds like a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
It definitely is, but for now,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to appreciate all the insights we've gained
Yes.
about what makes relationships thrive.
And to remember that love in all its forms is a powerful force that can bring us joy, connection, and a deeper understanding of ourselves. As we wrap up our deep dive into relationships, I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to love and partnership.
Absolutely. What works for one couple might be completely different for another. It's all about figuring out what works for you and your unique dynamic.
So true. And that takes self-awareness, honesty, and that willingness to communicate openly with your partner about your needs and expectations.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, if someone's listening to this and still feeling uncertain about their relationship, what advice would you give them?
I would encourage them to be kind to themselves and trust their intuition. Sometimes we already know the answer deep down, even if it's a bit scary to face it head on.
It's like that saying, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off.
Ha, so true. But in all seriousness, if you're constantly wrestling with that question of should I stay or should I go, it might be a sign that something needs to shift.
And that shift could be within the relationship itself, or it could mean making that difficult decision to move on.
Exactly. And remember, it's always okay to reach out for support. A therapist or counselor can be an incredible resource for navigating those complex emotions and making choices that feel right for you.
It's like having a guide to help you through a thick forest, someone who can offer a fresh perspective and help you see the path more clearly.
I love that analogy. And ultimately, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself.
So true.
Yeah.
Because if you're not happy and fulfilled as an individual, it's going to be tough to create a truly happy and fulfilling partnership.
Couldn't agree more. Take some time to reflect on what brings you joy, what makes you feel alive, and what you truly desire from life and love.
And don't be afraid to set boundaries. Prioritize your own well-being and make choices that honor your most authentic self.
Beautifully said. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do, both for ourselves and for our partners, is to let go of a relationship that's no longer serving us.
It's about recognizing that sometimes endings are necessary to make space for new beginnings, for growth,
Yeah.
and for discovering a love that truly lights us up.
And who knows, maybe those new beginnings will lead us to an even deeper, more fulfilling connection than we ever thought possible.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's raise a toast to love, to growth, to self-discovery, and to all the beautiful possibilities that lie ahead.
Cheers to that.
And to all our amazing listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, you are worthy of love, and you deserve a relationship that brings you joy, connection, and a profound sense of belonging.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those hearts open.